Hi, I'm Sean O'Donnell. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Financial Services at Publicis Sapient, where I help set our technology strategy, and I also help a number of our key clients on their digital transformation journey.
Hi, I'm Gareth Richardson, COO at Thought Machine. And Thought Machine, we're building Vault, which is our cloud-native core banking platform to revolutionize the financial services industry.
I think actually the legacy core banking systems in some ways are a little bit much maligned. You know, they serve a purpose and they've been there for a long time. I think one thing that has happened is I think there's a lot of ecosystem around them, so there's a lot of dependency around them, and I think that's really it's kind of like dragging down, you know, that core platform that's there. I also think in terms of saying if you look at kind of lots of the large banks, the technology is very out of date. You know, we trip over banks that they have core banking platforms that are written in languages that frankly don't even exist now, not even in terms of saying can't be compiled. Just the knowledge base in terms of saying actually underpinning what they're doing. And that really kind of then hinders as you kind of go up the stack and you go up the food chain. It kind of really changes if you're in the business in terms of saying in mortgages and you want to create a new product. That's really, really hard because really they're built around a certain structure, a certain way they work, and you know that's really challenging. And I think the other thing then is obviously from an operation perspective, you know, lots of them were kind of tied to kind of legacy hardware, right? So that's again a huge problem in terms of saying you can't just sort of say, well, I'm going to move it to, you know, a new VM and that's it. So I think, you know, there's a number of things I think in terms of saying tech-wise, the kind of hardware, and definitely the ecosystem dependencies definitely doesn't help.
Yeah, I guess to make it kind of simple from our perspective, the bank, they were built for a different purpose. They were built when your passbook you went into a branch with your passbook and you got one query, one balance once a month, and someone wrote in what it is. They were built for that, and they're not built for the new way of digital services and other stuff. And it means you have to build a load of stuff around it to make that happen. And they've been remarkable how well they've survived, changed, and moved through. But I think we're at the end of that now, and it's almost like teaching an elephant to tap dance, and it doesn't work. It's about understanding what's in that stack at that point, and understanding what linkages you have in different parts of the organization and the technology. Mostly it's about building staging architecture, though, of a sort of an ability to aggregate together or fan out different pieces of information where you need. So take a customer, has to be able to then go to multiple different product engines to get multiple, so that you can run in coexistence. I think for a large bank, you've just got to accept that you'll be in coexistence for a while. It's because of the risk that a regulator won't be willing to take in terms of big bang movements and things like that. So you have to be able to build an architecture that exists in this sort of coexistence mode for the large incumbents. For the smaller migrations of smaller banks, you want to be able to build a proof point first and then prove that you can run these products. Maybe it's a new front book that you're going to build that will build that proof point and then move into migrating pouring in, if you like, the existing customers into that.
Yeah, and I think what we've seen as well is like the emergence of kind of methodologies around kind of domain modeling, which has really helped, right? So in other words, looking at kind of the payments domain, the risk domain, kind of finance, and then the core banking product engine. I mean, we've seen a lot of these things over the years in terms of saying just becomes a bit of a smorgasbord, whereas like now using those types of methods to really clearly define in terms of saying where the lines get drawn, and then potentially even kind of extending that in terms of saying where, you know, we've seen the emergence of like open banking and APIs publicly facing to consumers, lots of financial institutions looking at how can we apply kind of API kind of first methodologies to separate those pieces of the stack, and there's various methods in that. So it's kind of like both a horizontal kind of separation as well as a vertical one. It's different depending on where your starting point is. I mean, think everybody has kind of like a target aspiration in place in terms of saying actually where they need to go and how they get there. But I think typically it depends in terms of saying like a number of things in terms of saying how the bank is kind of structured from a hosting perspective. Some people are coming out in terms of saying that's our biggest problem. We're running out of tin in our data center, and therefore like any move in terms of saying to IaaS platforms in the cloud probably is theirs. Other ones are coming at it from the perspective in terms of saying, actually, our business just can't move fast enough. The change is too difficult. And therefore, they're coming from more of a kind of business transformation lens. And therefore, for them, it's less about kind of a hosting or an infrastructure problem. It's actually in terms of, well, we just need to reinvent how this part of the business works. And therefore, you kind of get into the element of the 6 R's, and you get into kind of rebuilds or re-architecting those pieces. So I really think in terms of saying it's largely dependent in terms of saying what your starting point is, and even potentially even in terms of how you design yourself internally and what you see yourself as your future kind of target model.
Yeah, I'd only add to that, it's a journey. As you say, you start from a different place, but don't expect to just do everything overnight. But also, the end goal should be to get all the benefits that comes with a different way of working and a different way of approaching. The cloud isn't just a technology answer, it's an approach to how you deliver software and the benefits that come from that. And I think that too often we focus on just the hosting lift tin over here, and it's all about how do you get into agile ways of working, how do you get into more real-time ways of interconnecting these things, API first, etc. All of those pieces is part of that journey, and you need to, as you said, choose where you start, but you have to get the best out of it, you should be thinking in those sorts of terms as you go through. Top tip would be to build a team that really understands the infrastructure, understands that way of doing it, and look at your ways of working. Look at how you are able to deal with incrementally building towards where you're going. The technologies are wholly different. The way of doing something is, to be truly cloud native, is wholly different to where you've been before. And to unlock those benefits, you do need to embrace it and understand that is a different way of working. And so it's mostly a personnel issue to sort of work through and get the right buy-in across the whole of the organization to do it.
Yeah, and I think the other piece of it is the fact that, traditionally in terms of software development and that kind of stuff, you would understand that that you're on a solid base, right? So, in the past it would have been JVMs and, they'll be around for 5 or 10 years, whatever else. In cloud, you're sitting on a bunch of services that, a third party effectively is in control of. So you got to early on get into the mindset in your development and engineering teams in terms of saying that, they need to kind of abstract themselves away from certain services that may change. They also just need to deal with change better, and certainly you guys have seen this in terms of what you build. And I think the other thing is you kind of need to embrace it in a different way, because traditionally, like most firms would have been like, you have a change development organization and then you kind of throw it over the fence and you got an operations team. It just doesn't work like that. SaaS world is the case in terms of saying you've got engineers who are running in an SRE mode in operations, and that fundamentally changes in terms of saying how you build that software. It kind of really changes the dynamics in terms of monitoring and performance and that kind of stuff.